Hi, and welcome back to Festival Place the Pineapples in association with the Design Council. My name is Christine Murray, Director of the Festival of Place and Editor-in-Chief of The Developer, and this is our second session featuring the shortlist for the Pineapple for Future Place, which seeks to recognize a master plan, planning application, action plan, or design proposal for a place, whether in development or theoretical, for a mixed-use neighborhood, large or small. We have 7 projects shortlisted for Future Place, and each team has just 10 minutes to present. Our judges then have 10 minutes to ask questions. To keep it fair, I'll be informing them when they have 1 minute to go. And we've got 2 more amazing projects in this session to explore. You'll be meeting the judges after our first presenter, but I'll take a moment to introduce them now. They include Magali Thomson, project lead for Placemaking Great Ormond Street Hospital, where she combines her 14 years of experience as an architect with a passion for healthy spaces between the buildings. There's Catherine Max, health and sustainability consultant of Catherine Max Consulting, who focuses on social and environmental sustainability and reducing health inequalities, and Julian, head of Masterplanning and Design at Quintain, who is an architect who went client-side and looks to realize the potential of any opportunity from district to doorknob. So thank you so much to our dedicated judges. And please, emoji round of applause if you can find them, the happy face. We do love the emojis. Thank you very much. So I'd like to introduce our first project being presented, which is Granton Waterfront in Edinburgh, which is presented by Jude, Barber, and Jordan McCrae from Collective Architecture. Hi, Jude.
Hello.
And Jordan, brilliant. Well, we will. I will disappear. I'll be back in 9 minutes. Apologies in advance for the interruption, and good luck.
Thank you. Bear with me. I'll just share the screen. Great. I hope you can all see that. Thank you very much for having us here today. I'm Jude Barber. I'm Architect Director at Collective Architecture.
And I'm Jo McCrae. I'm Architectural Assistant at Collective Architecture.
And together we led the multidisciplinary team for Granton Waterfront, working closely alongside the Dutch urbanist Julian of Studio for New Realities for the client team at the City of Edinburgh Council and partners. And the image that you see here is the view looking across the site and the Firth of Forth towards the Forth Road Bridge and Fife. And at present, North Edinburgh, where Granton is located just there at the centre of the map, is often considered at the edge or to the fringes of the city. However, it's actually only 3 miles from the city centre and adjacent to that incredible coastline that we saw in the picture. And as Edinburgh continues to grow and evolve, the need for an inclusive, affordable and sustainable development for all has become ever more acute. So really, the city identified this opportunity for this area to be redeveloped and for this to become a new coastal quarter, to be at the centre of the region as part of a constellation of coastal towns within an activated bay. So focusing in on the site and Granton itself, you can see the extent of our area outlined there in pink. And I know there's a lot on this slide, but the key things here are ultimately it comprises of around 200 hectares of open space and parkland, 50 hectares of which is contaminated, derelict industrial land with a gasometer and former station building at its heart. And that's the kind of red portion that you see there on the map. And over the years, the area has experienced poverty, social inequality, lack of investment, and piecemeal development that's come from failed master plans that have only developed in part. However, the area has got so much potential, including that extensive green space you see there, the extensive coastline to the east, the potential to connect communities, and for the land to be developed to the west, connecting to the urban edge. And in terms of ownership, the majority of the site is acquired and owned by the City of Edinburgh Council and the Scottish Government. So that poses a real opportunity to develop in line with policy. And it's also home to National Museums of Scotland and the National Galleries and Edinburgh College.
Great, so here you can see the proposed plan for the waterfront with new development shown in black, and that is located within the formal industrial land. The interventions made at Granton Waterfront build on the site's ecological and cultural significance and the need to create new homes and facilities. This includes approximately 3,000 new homes, which are knitted into the landscape and vacant sites. These are of mixed size, typology and tenure, and are arranged to maximise views to the coastline, open spaces and back to the city, which you can see in this section here. And then existing infrastructure is enhanced with green-blue connections formed between new and existing communities. Development also includes a new school, cultural facilities and commercial units, which are integrated and connected via human-scale streets and avenues. And these are linked with active travel routes, a new tram extension, bus routes, and 2 new active travel hubs. At the heart of the project lies the creation of a new 10-hectare flood-resilient dynamic coastal park. This is proposed on formal industrial reclaimed land that was previously inaccessible to the public. And new development is purposefully set back from the water's edge, giving the coastline back to the city, nature and people. And the park has been designed to be open, healthy and inclusive for all, and it maximises views, integrates flood resilience and enhances biodiversity. So the process of developing the approach to Granton Waterfront was actually almost as important as the final outcome, and this was underpinned by an engagement process that involved street workshops, stakeholder surgeries, public events and cross-party political group workshops. The key aim being that this was not to be just another master plan, but a new way of doing things. So over a year-long process, everybody collectively developed a phase plan for Granton, which was founded on a robust but flexible framework. And this included a series of diverse yet complementary character areas, which linked new and existing communities, and this is shown on the screen now. And the plans were not only spatial, and the framework is underpinned by parallel ongoing learning and cultural strategies, existing housing renewal programmes and wider active travel proposals. And the next slide here just shows some of the extracts from the development framework, showing the range of scales and detail that we're working in. So from the kind of wide scale positioning of open spaces down to indicative street sections along key routes.
And from the outset, we worked as a team with the community and the client to develop a set of principles called the Granton Principles, or promises, if you like, which combine the physical, the spatial, the social and the cultural aspects of developing place together. And they set out an approach that aims to learn from past mistakes and instead provide a holistic, people-centred approach to development and embed those principles and behaviours through every stage of the project and the development, and every person working within it, whether that's developing, working, visiting, investing over time. And the next few slides, what we tried to do is really, how does that play out, on the ground? What's the impact of that on the ground? And, what really trying to do here is create a connected and vibrant place. This is an image of the reinvigorated Harbour Road that blends a mix of new and existing development to create a mixed-use high street with retail, workspaces, housing, active streets and open spaces. In the development, there's up to 3 kilometres of new cycleways provided, connecting into the wider cycle network, and a new tram link proposed that connects to the city centre and surrounding neighbourhoods, providing a 25-minute cycle as well into the city centre from the area. And this really needs to be a place to live, work and visit. This image here shows the existing and historic station building to the left, which is currently being repurposed to be a new enterprise and cultural centre. It's one of 6 key heritage sites within the development framework that's reimagined through creative reuse and partnership working. And it's really an example of how Granton can be somewhere where people really do want to come and stay, live and work. And this site actually is also one of those transport gateways and active travel hubs that Joe talked about earlier. And as we know, this framework is providing 3,000 new affordable mixed tenure low carbon homes. And this image is an example of one of the neighbourhood streets in Upper and Lower Granton. And these are typically and deliberately human scaled between sort of 3 and 6 story maximum in certain points, pedestrian focused and linked to active travel corridors and the blue infrastructure integrated within it. 75% of the homes are to be car free, and each home within 2-minute walk of public green space. And really, at the end of the day, it's creating a place that will stand the test of time. Here you can see the heart of Upper Granton with views towards the Firth of Forth along the streets and open spaces. The active ground floors host a range of civic uses, with a new school nearby and a repurposed existing gasometer at the heart of it. You can see people using the space there off to the right. And within this, there's provision for new learning spaces developed across 5 public sector partnerships with a real commitment to the delivery. And this is reinforced by the ongoing learning and cultural strategy that was developed for skills, opportunity and innovation in the area, which is currently lacking work and opportunity. And so to close, Granton Waterfront positively faces the need for climate resilience and inclusivity by taking a holistic, low carbon approach to design, development, ecology, energy and behaviour. And already this process is underway in terms of next steps. The client's developing their financial and socio-economic plan, business case, and later in the year they'll be seeking a development partner for the next phases later in the year. A few of the early action projects and sites that were identified are underway, such as the lighting up of the gasometer in partnership with Edinburgh College, who are based on the site. A demonstrator housing project is being developed using modern methods of construction to inform the future phases. And the Hidden Doors Festival are basing themselves here in 2021 to bring people to the area. Sustrans is also funding new cycle routes, and the tram extension was approved to Newhaven nearby to the west of Granton just last year and be completed in spring 2023. So there's lots to feel positive about, and I think we love this quote which came through the consultation process from a Granton resident that just says, imagine Edinburgh celebrating its shoreline. How amazing would that be? Thank you.
Brilliant. And you were actually just on such an exact 9 minutes that I didn't even have to give you a warning. So congratulations on that. I'm going to invite our judges to put their questions to you. So Catherine, if I could ask you to start, would you like to explore Granton?
I'd love to. Thank you so much for your submission and your presentation. I'm really struck by the integration of the different strategies and how that's being thought through, and that's a great opportunity to being led by the council. That makes it more possible. I have a big cross-cutting question and one more specific one that you might want to relate them. So the big cross-cutting one is that you do talk about reducing inequalities as being key to the thinking, and I'd really like to understand more from you how you think the plan and the design and indeed the place going forward will potentially address that. And then the specific one was about the park. Jordan, you said the park we're designed to be inclusive for all. So I'd love to know what you mean by that, and I'm hoping that it's more than simply accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, shall I do the first bit, Jo? Yeah. Okay. So, what in terms of reducing inequalities, I think we talk about the principles there in the presentation. I think this really is, and I hope this came across as this learning from the mistakes maybe of the past, which is that it can't just be about new development. It can't just be about new people, shiny things for new people. So really, one of the conversations this was embedded right the way through the consultation process was about, how can what is happening here work with what's already there and build on that, as opposed to sort of be a challenge to that. And that's where the sort of partnership working really came in. And the key points was about the affordability of the homes. That Edinburgh has a housing crisis in that respect, in the sense that the city centre is so congested, there's real pressure on that. And actually this area is turning it, instead of being a challenge and a problem, into kind of opportunity is key. And I think building on what was, there's a college there, there's already arts and cultural organisations there. The is that people are coming in to go to those and they're going away. It isn't necessarily local people using, and that's exactly what the learning and cultural strategy is really all about, which is how, starting from primary schools, before people even think about tertiary education, and also lifelong learning as well, and how can those agencies be accessible. So the where those new facilities are positioned is really key relative to how people might access those things and feel ownership over them. I hope that answers the question. We haven't even touched on active travel, but I'm sure that'll come up later.
I'm staying off active travel because I'm a trustee of Sustran, so I'm not asking you any questions today.
Okay.
Magali, do you want to join us and put?
Unless you wanted to answer on your other question.
The coastal park, the coastal park.
Yeah. Magali, you're on mute, so if you just...
Oh, sorry. No, in terms, I had a question about the park as well, so maybe you can answer them together. But a similar question, I was curious to know what the park would offer different members of the community of different ages. And just to say that I thought the awareness of the social and demographic history of the site and its heritage, but seeing its potential alongside that was really positive. So the second question I had was in terms of this linking up to the existing neighbourhoods which surround your site, how which I guess won't be invested in as heavily as this will be, is how will you ensure that those surrounding neighbourhoods have truly feel it's also for them and they feel welcome? So yeah, the two questions. Thank you.
Do you want to touch the park one?
Yeah.
And I'll touch on the linking with other neighbourhoods.
Yes, I think the perspective of the park in relation to inclusivity and accessibility, I think from a physical sense, it was about creating that access back to the coastline. At the moment, that's quite privatised. So along the western edge of Edinburgh, its development is built on the shoreline. So it becomes a privatised space that's only associated with those houses. So by stepping back, we were automatically kind of reclaiming that space for the city. We're then also, the way we've kind of designed the structure of the kind of street and grid layout is about opening up views and connections. So I think when we did site analysis, it was something like there was over 1 kilometre of barriers, basically. If you were trying to get from the existing community to the sea, it was just line after line of fence. And a lot of, through the consultation, it came about this concept of, wouldn't it be great if I could just walk in a straight line? I could see the sea from my house, I could get to it. So that was the kind of base principle of accessibility and inclusivity. And then I think moving beyond that in terms of, I think when we move into more detailed design in the park, it's like, what do people want to see here? What spaces can we include? I think there's a kind of diversity in terms of the ecological and biodiversity in the site, but it's also, could local community groups actually help to define what uses and spaces are in here? Whether that's, there's a local swimming group and they just wanted a space where they could get into the water safely and get back out. So I think it's building that conversation as we move forward. So I could talk about that for ages, but I'll let Jude answer the next question.
Yeah, and the other one, and the other one was, and some of the uses as well, we're very clear about, the scale of these as well within that parkland need to be appropriate to that inclusive nature of it. The other one was linking to other areas. I mean, I think that's where the consultation process came in, because what we couldn't really talk about in detail here before, but there were different levels of groups that we were engaging with throughout the process. So there was the all-party political group. That was really key, because actually that's cross-party consensus around what's happening here, so the project doesn't get kiboshed, if the political landscape changes. And also that, there was a local group, the Northwest Waterfront group, which was made up of the 5 community councils that surround the site and obviously within the site itself. So they had local representatives there, and they were just pushing and demanding the whole time that exactly the answer to your question was or your question was constantly present as part of the process. So the housing renewal programme for the city does actually extend to new build and refurbishment of existing housing stock. So there's a commitment to sort of address that. There were also, the West Granton Road, which is currently a barrier. It was also about making those physical connections across. So those lines that Joe was talking about down to the river, that's not just considering the new development, those go right back into the existing communities and neighbourhoods too. So it's providing safe crossings across there and sightlines and views, and making that safe for children to just, 8-year-olds just go with their brothers and sisters down to the beach, and that's safe for them to do that as well. So those were there was a sort of governance and communications, consultation, and also the sort of physicality of how you actually make those connections as well is considered.
Thank you both, that's great.
Julian, would you like to speak to
hi.
Jude?
It's a great presentation and beautiful imagery. I mean, this sort of north-facing coastal quarter, the park, they're quite ethereal. So I think you've captured the sort of atmosphere of the place really well. So I've got two questions really. They're kind of related. You mentioned it's almost like a development framework for seek development partners. To what extent have you covered the long-term operation and maintenance of this park? I mean, it's a considerable piece of public realm. So who pays for the upkeep, etc., etc. And secondly, you talk about the gasometer being repurposed, and it looks like there's some people climbing in it. I mean, is it a sort of a leisure-based repurposing that you're looking for? And maybe there's a link between events in the gasometer, events in the park, revenue streams, and maintenance and management thereof. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we were always very conscious that previous master plans had actually shown development up to 600 houses and stuff on that park. So it's a big conversation to have around why you're not building on that. It's going to cause us a maintenance issue. But actually, when you think of it the other way around, if you build on it, it's more of a problem if you gain revenue from that, or if it becomes into sort of private ownership or whatever. So the park itself actually becomes, because it's a climate resilient landscape, it's actually a hard work. It's not just a park. It's actually a bit of infrastructure that is allowing that whole coastline to operate well. So there were, again, what we understand that parkland is actually going to be, a combination. There's obviously going to be a combination of uses and ownership around that, whether it's the private ownership, council ownership, and community ownership. And I suppose at this stage it's still quite broad, but there's recognition that there needs to be a management and maintenance plan for that. But what was clear was that there was a real commitment from the city to do that, because ultimately, and the government, in terms of funding that infrastructure, to ensure that is covered. The other thing was just about
it's interesting because one of the participants in the forum, Stephen Boxall, was just asking the question, why does the gasometer have to have a purpose? Why can't it just be something beautiful to look at? I mean, I suppose I'm particularly interested in is, it's great to do images which look great at day one, but to be truly sustainable, how do you generate income to maintain these spaces?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things actually that came up, the gasometer itself, I think I can't remember the exact, is millions of pounds just to make it safe. So, in terms of because we did the Titan crane, so we know how much these things cost to just literally paint them and bring them up to standard. So that has been allowed for within the costing, which is literally just keeping it as an icon, as the commentator says there, as a piece of landscape effectively, or part of the fabric. One of the things that we looked at was the scale of that, is everything from a full-blown event space, run by an operator, for example, we've seen the Eden project, for example, coming to Dundee, V&A and things, it's that scale of operator, through to, is it literally just kept and lit up as an icon like we did the water towers in Glasgow. So I think it can be anywhere probably. Well, for us, what was really important, that as a framework, it didn't rely on it being the big event. The framework worked regardless of whether that is just retained as as something you light up as an icon, or whether. So that was very much part of the commercial, the socioeconomic and commercial strategy, that it was proportionate and could be staged and could grow or retract, and it didn't kibosh the whole scheme. It didn't. So the people of this area will get their framework. That was really important. So I think, we're showing people that we wanted to show in that image something quite like touch, was i.e. it is kept and it might then become like a climbing activity kind of centre, rather than that it needs to be an SECC or some big kind of venue. So even though that is still very much on the cards, and that's why the positioning of it's key, with the coastline and the waterfront Broadway coming together, so those two big spaces could potentially work together if they at a city scale.
So it's my job to now jump in and say that's time. So thank you very much, Jude and Georgia. And I can tell already that this is going to be a pretty tough deliberation for our judges. I'd really like to now welcome Angeli Ganoo-Fletcher from PRP Architects to present High Path Estate. Hi, Angeli.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
I'm going to give you the floor. Good luck, and I'll be back in 9 minutes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angeli, and I'm a landscape architect, and I lead the landscape team at PRP. High Path is one of our most ambitious schemes we have been part of. Our passion as landscape architects is actually to deliver true places for people, and this has been the key driver in our team's approach. The High Path estate is located on the edge of the Wandle River corridor near Wimbledon, with great links into central London. The aspiration is to ensure that it becomes part of the Wandle Trail, along with all the key destinations that you can see on this slide, just like the Dean City Farm, Morden Hall Park, amongst others. The estate itself is located in South Wimbledon, near South Wimbledon Station, and it's actually a tangle of competing uses and illegible streetscape, as you can see. As such, the estate is dislocated from its surrounding neighbourhood, and it's bound on all four sides by roads and internally with an array of cul-de-sacs. The site lacks legibility with a segregation of vehicular and pedestrian movements. The disjointed layout, poor interface with pockets of green spaces not large enough to be functional. And these are some of the images of what the estate looks like, with array of spaces, open spaces with not a lot of function. The future of a place really lies in the hand of people who live and use it. The development of the High Path Master Plan is a unique regeneration scheme project driven by the community for the community. Developed in very close collaboration with the local community, the local stakeholders, via a numerous type of activities, as you can see on this slide. The principles driving the master plan resulted in a comprehensive design guidance for the whole of the estate. By really setting out clear design objective and guidance from the beginning, the design quality desired by the community is achieved. The unique opportunity here is to really integrate and reconnect the estate with its surrounding, and reconnecting the neighbourhood into the wonderful Victorian fabric that you can see within this slide on the northern end of the estate. So one of the key principles was to really look at how we can drag that Victorian fabric through onto the estate. Placemaking at the heart of the regeneration process, really eradicating that them and us feeling, and create a distinct place by restoring the character and the sense of place. Rethinking the Victorian block and how this could be brought onto the master plan, and also looking at a better siting for High Path, not just looking at the northern Victorian fabric, but also look at the eastern and western side, as well as really bringing the richness of what happens in the southern end through onto the estate to really set the estate itself. And then amenity at the heart of the place, and tapping into the strategic network of the London green spaces along the Wandle River corridor. Building up a vision for change by reconnecting the street is our main aim, following the patterns of the Victorian street, a permeable network of street is created with public spaces that are well connected to the surrounding area and really accessible to all and from everywhere too, making it a safe place where people want to live, and also with good amenity spaces that are usable, well managed and owned. And in turn, this forms a balanced community, a place of choice, a place with a heart, a sustainable community, creating a socially, economically and environmental future with a stable and enduring sense of community. Our aim, ultimate aim, really, we wanted to restitch the fabric to extend that neighbourhood. The island feel of what the estate was is changed to be part of the future community. The neighbourhood park, central to the master plan, with spaces to play, exercise, sit, relax, grow our own food. It is centred within this master plan, and you can see it needed to be the same footprint and size of what the building block is shown within that master plan, really following the principles of the size of what's happened on the other side of the Victorian fabric. Traditional north-south streets creating green corridors, and then we've got east-west inner residential street with the retained maturity of the tree corridor along the high street. The function of each of the spaces created has been tailored to work with who will be the users of the spaces. The landscape structure actually really binds the overall master plan by grounding the landscape principles of the master plan. The inherent relationship between streetscape and building is that factor that we really wanted to bring onto the master plan. By applying our design philosophy of this really contextual reintegration within the fabric with our collaborative community-led approach, the delivery of the master plan will hopefully help in enhancing life chances for the existing and also the new communities. The visual shown here is a set of visual showing the unique intervention that to the estate for the creation of safe mews streets. We've also got yards that really promotes activity during the day and as well as during the night, and also park streets looked at with the seasonal change that they also bring. The creation of a neighbourhood park and not a series of estate park is our way of creating a park for all in Wimbledon, a place for all and a destination for all age group, and responds to the need of the existing and future residents. The retention of the mature London plains along the high street, as shown on our previous slide, is the landscape stepping stone into the park, and that richness is brought onto not just the park, but throughout the master plan too. Sustainability and community has really been at the core of our design philosophy. Sustainable lifestyle choices, embracing real social value, community engagement that create legacy. The slides that you can see here was one of the tree planting exercise that we did with the residents and the community. And tree planting within the vicinity of the estate encouraged this real community feel. And these trees were planted and are being looked after by a core group of residents. They will mature on site for later deployment to their final location in their future phases. It is also a key way for us of helping and improving health and air quality.
Just 1 minute.
To finish, a truly transformational change for successive generation. This regeneration has changed the perception of an estate to an integrated neighbourhood. By listening to the community and applying our design philosophy, we have created a place that addresses current and future residents' needs and unifies the estate with the rest of Wimbledon, creating an inclusive and sustainable destination that will bring, hopefully, employment, well-being, economic prosperity and social cohesion to the area for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angeli. If I can invite our judges, Julian, would you like to kick us off this time in looking at High Path Estate?
Yeah, thank you very much, Angela. I sort of was interested because I sort of vaguely know the area in South London, and I think one thing you didn't mention in your presentation, which I think is important, I understand, I mean, just to the south of the site, you've got Merton Abbey Primary School and two schools, so social infrastructure of schools seems to be well covered. But with schemes of this size, can I particularly ask you about phasing? How do you see this being phased in such a way that you can not only deliver your kind of end state vision, but you can also successfully manage any movement of residents within the scheme as it's brought forward?
So this was started a few years ago. So we started working on the scheming. We won the bid in 2012, and there's been a set amount of community activity since, including with the school, Julian, which I didn't mention. We've had a series of Regeneration Week, actually, that we've kept going every year since we started the process. When we started looking at the overall project, we did the outline master plan and an outline approval we received. And it was a hybrid application with a phase 1 detailed application, which is now currently on site and is nearly finished as well. So the way it was done in terms of the phasing and the decanting, because obviously there are 600 homes currently on site, was we started phase 1 and the area there was just a set of garages. So we weren't actually moving anyone off site. So it was demolishing a set of garages to then build onto the garages for phase 1. And then we start the decanting process. So people are not actually moved off of the estate. So it's a positive regeneration process. So people are seeing, and I think that's probably why they've been involved from outset in terms of how and what they wanted their place to look like and change from what they are, from what it is now.
Magali, would you like to jump in and share your thought?
Yeah, thanks, Angeli. I was going to ask a similar question, just, I guess, ensuring that the 600 families or homes there all had a place in the new scheme, and about how you move them into their homes. So that was good to hear. I was also interested, well, there were two things I was going to ask about. You spoke about rethinking the Victorian block, and I wanted to maybe hear a bit more about how that has worked and whether it's actually influenced the sort of layouts, for example, of the residences and things like that. And the other question, I wanted to find out a bit more about the ground floor plane and what's happening at ground floor in terms of activating the site more generally, please. Sure.
So if I may just respond to the Victorian fabric. It was very sure when we approached the estate that people were incredibly proud about living in SW19, and that is the postcode that they all have. However, everybody living on the estate really felt a disconnection with the rest of it. You've got the very affluent area on the other side of the high street with the Victorian houses. From outset, when we started the design process and the collaborative approach with series of coffee mornings with people living on the estate, they really wanted to be very simple. They wanted to have that shape and form of what was happening on the other side of the road. And this is where our design principle started. So we walked the streets of Wimbledon with the residents and asked them what they really like with what they were seeing. And hence bringing that and working with our urban design team to look at how the building form could actually replicate what was happening on the other side of Merton High Street. And in terms of what's happening on the ground plane, along Merton High Street, it is going to be currently, because we've got the station on one end and we've got shops on the other side, it will be an amount of commercial and food and beverages on the ground floor on one side. And then within the master plan, it's predominantly homes on the ground floor. And then the blocks, actually what we call the mansion block facing the park, is also a series of residential blocks and homes, as well as community spaces. So we've got areas for a community room, etc. Again, this is what at the request of the residents on site currently.
Thank you, Angeli.
Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you in particular for that, for the answer about the perception of the estate versus the integration, because that was something that I was keen to delve into, and you've made that very clear, and it's interesting. So maybe what I'll do is take the opportunity to ask you to expand a little more on the environmental sustainability side of things. I noted that you've included some from the submission, some behavioural things to kind of help residents maximize that and energy saving and so forth. Perhaps you could just say more about that side of the design of the space and its resilience going forward.
Sure. So I think in terms of the building itself, I think the proposal is about looking at insulated building fabric. And then when we come on to the site, obviously the creation of a park, and quite an extensive park within the centre of the master plan, is bringing that soft park and using this as a sustainable urban drainage within the overall master plan. Maximising ecological value, and also looking at embracing that circular economy. Obviously, we're demolishing buildings during various different stages, and how this can be done successfully. Also look at green and brown roofs, as well as water conservation and rain gardens along the side of the park. It's very much also about the healthy streets and how we're promoting that walking. There's not a lot of car parking on proposal within this master plan, of course, with South Wimbledon being on the doorstep. And it is about promoting that healthy street and health and well-being within the overall master plan. We're not very far from quite rich, we've talked about the Wandle River corridor, so we really want to promote that health and well-being within the master plan. And also the active spaces exercise within the park too.
And just on the buildings, you talk about them being insulated. Are they also going to be well adapted to the increased heat we're anticipating? Well, we're already getting, yeah.
Yeah, we're working with the sustainability consultants that we've worked with, and this is what we've looked at. Obviously, with the building fabric, not a lot of glass, although along Merton High Street, because of the commercial aspect, there will be a bit of that. But in terms of the residential element, it is replicating the brick of the Victorian elements on the other side of the road.
Well, we have time for another question if you'd like to go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I mean, I know car park is always a challenge with these schemes, but on Google Maps, it does seem.
Oh, Julian, we just missed you just for a second. Can you start your question?
Sorry about that. This sort of scheme, looking on Google Maps, there clearly does seem to be an awful lot of sort of on-street parking for existing residents, and I'm wondering what challenges you've had when you've been talking to residents about moving to a new home, but also giving up their sacred provision of parking spaces. I can understand that for new residents, if it's car-free from the outset, that's part of the deal when you move in. But how does it work for the existing residents?
So it was a challenge, because obviously trying to explain to existing residents that the mayor is asking us to not provide any car parking within their estate. We had to talk to them. Obviously, we've provided some parking spaces within the master plan, not on street, but because some of the blocks are, as you can see, the perimeter block that we've provided we've got underground parking for some of the residents. So this was our way of taking parking away from the streets, and also pleasing the existing residents that were remaining on site too.
So can I just check, does that mean everyone who has a parking space now will have a parking space in the next iteration, or is it that some will and some won't?
Some will and some won't.
Okay. Well, that's actually our time. So thank you so much, Angeli, and to our judges again for your brilliant contributions. We are now going to go to a break, and we'll be back with our final presentations of the day in the Future Place category. So we'll be back right on the hour at 4 o'clock with 3 more projects. So do take a break, have a cup of tea, and if you want to join one of the tables in the social lounge, which will appear in a moment, do so, and you can connect with some of the other people who are here today. And thanks again to the Design Council who are supporting this event, and we'll see you back here at 4.
Thank you.